Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the Honor 200 Pro. Let's get started. Unlike in past years, Honor has raised the level and price of this device, which is now much closer to the high-end. In fact, we could consider it as a kind of entry high-end because although it integrates some very attractive things, there are still some little details where it could be left owing as a high-end device completely. However, it definitely does integrate several attractive points. However, you have to consider that its price is quite high. 19,999 pesos. That's more or less $1,015. Although consider this only as a reference price, since the prices here are not the same as over there. Besides, the exchange rate may be varying a lot, but it is definitely an expensive device. Although if you notice, it has 512 gigabytes of storage in Mexico as a single version. Although in other countries, maybe there are other variants. But definitely, 512 gigabytes immediately results as an attractive point, considering that, for example, the iPhone 16, which will have a very similar price, has only 128 gigabytes. So compared to an iPhone, definitely that is much more attractive, but you have to remember that you also have a lot of other Android competitors that could be just as interesting at a similar or even lower price point. It's going to depend a lot on what you as a user are most interested in. However, in this case, if you buy it from the Honor store, you get an Honor Pad X9, Honor's 100-watt wireless charger, and extended warranty for 1 year. So I think it's definitely worth getting it from the Honor store. I'll leave you the link in the description in case you want to buy it there. But what do you think if you join me to know it in depth so that you as a user can see if it is what you are looking for or if you are going to give priority to any of its competitors that even at this point of the year possibly already lowered its price? So let's talk about the design. Let's start by taking a look at the front, where we will obviously find reduced bezels due to the integrated curved screen. In that sense, it has an attractive design. Although curiously, the cutout for the front camera is pill-shaped, much wider than what we normally see on Android devices, but less wide than what we see on the iPhone, although here there is no facial recognition system. So, in aesthetics it complies, but unfortunately it should be noted that it does not have Gorilla Glass, and in this case Honor does not communicate that it has Honor Shield Glass or some other special glass. This honestly seems very strange to me because, as I told you at the beginning, it is a device that aims to be an access to the high end, and the fact of not having some outstanding resistance glass is a very important absence. For example, in the Honor X8B or in the X9B that in other markets is known as Magic 6 Lite, we find a thicker glass with very good resistance, and for me it is inexplicable that Honor does not integrate it in this model. And if it has integrated it, it is inexplicable that it does not communicate it officially, so in resistance I think this device finds its main weaknesses. On the right side, we have the volume buttons and the on-off button in a plastic frame that again will make the device not as resistant as if it had aluminum frames, which is what we usually find in the high end. On the top, we find a microphone, infrared for universal remote control, and a secondary audio output. While on the left, the frame is completely clean, but it serves to appreciate that the device has a frame thickness of more than 8 millimeters. At the bottom, we will find the tray for the SIM card. In this case, I have the dual SIM version, but remember that this may vary in different countries and even with different distributors, so check this well before purchasing your device. We also find a microphone, the USB-C port, and the main audio output. On the back, we see a very original design. I have the Oasis Cyan edition, but it is also available in black. Please note that it is a cover with two finishes, one that looks with some special waves and another that looks more reflective with a curvature in these finishes to give entry to the camera module, which also has some particularities in its design. The ring that covers the module in some parts is a little thicker, in some parts thinner, and the truth is that it looks attractive, although personally I have not loved this design. But it depends on the taste of each person. I like the color, only that the dual finish with this curve and the camera module in this form personally has not been so much to my liking, but I insist that this depends on the taste of each person. What is definitely something objective is that it does not have so much resistance now with respect to water, since it offers IP level 65. And for a device that claims to be an entry to the high end, it should definitely have IP67 at least, and at best IP68. But with IP65, let's say it would withstand accidental drops into very shallow water, but if you were to drop it into much deeper water, it definitely has a very low chance of survival. So both in the resistance of the screen and against water, we see a very weak point in this device. The weight of this device is 199 grams, so if it's a slim device, let's say it's slim and relatively light, but in terms of resistance, it falls short. The screen has 6.78 inches on its diagonal. It is a considerably large screen. Its resolution is 1224 by 2700 pixels. It gives us a density of 437 pixels per inch, so text even with very small fonts look really sharp. It has AMOLED technology with very intense colors, high contrast. On the screen, it does not disappoint at all. It is a screen that does live up to what we expected. It gives us 120 Hz in its refresh rate, although if we get demanding, we could ask for LTPO technology. Remember that this type of technology would allow us to have low power consumption when we're displaying static content, and it's a technology that we normally see in premium devices. That's why I say that's only if we get really picky. In that sense, it doesn't disappoint, but it could have surprised us. Where it does surprise is in brightness, as its maximum peak is 4000 nits. This is obviously when you are watching HDR content and only in some areas of the screen. The entire screen is not capable of reaching that maximum brightness, but even so, the screen gives us a very good level of brightness for outdoors. It's a screen that's really going to look good in bright sunlight. And with respect to the minimum brightness, I think it doesn't go low enough, and consider that it doesn't have the extra dimming mode. So if you're going to use it in the evenings and you like to use the screen at very low brightness, it doesn't have that many capabilities in this case. Although fortunately it does have different tools that can help you, such as the dark mode or the visual rest mode that Honor presumes is going to be extremely comfortable because it has a dimming rate of 3840 Hz, so the flicker is actually very low, so it's a relatively comfortable display. One thing I liked about this display is that it does have the natural tone option capable of adjusting the white balance of this display automatically based on the white color that's in the environment. This is something that few devices integrate, and we could highlight it as a strong point. While in color calibration it has a normal mode and a vivid mode, it is up to you as a user if you prefer slightly less intense colors or you like them as saturated as possible. And either way, it also has a manual adjustment of the color temperature of the screen. Through software, it also has a video enhancer compatible with YouTube. And Honor has also highlighted that they integrate a technology for the screen to respond better even when your hands are wet, which, as you know, is a very difficult thing for many screens that tend to get confused. So in short, the screen is good. Let's talk now about the sound, as this device integrates a speaker at the bottom, which will be the main speaker, and a speaker at the top but with two audio outputs, one in the frame and another in the earpiece area for calls. The sound has the expected quality. Fortunately, it has good amplitude and even has a 200% volume mode that will increase the gain to give the maximum possible power, although it goes up mostly in the mid and treble frequencies. So when using this mode, the sound can get to sound a bit more annoying, but if you like a boomy sound, you could enable this mode. Fortunately, it's something that you turn on or off as you like. Let's listen to a little test, but remember, it's not the same as listening to it live. Fortunately, the sound is of good quality. It has a sufficient presence of bass frequencies. Nothing spectacular, but it doesn't disappoint. Where it does disappoint is in the software options, as it does not offer an equalizer available for the speakers, but only for the headphones. In addition, it offers some surround sound style settings, but as I tell you, this is only when we have using headphones. We will also have a 10-band equalizer available, including some presets, but only with headphones. Obviously, it should be noted that there is no headphone jack, so you'll need a USB-C headset or Bluetooth headphones. Although if you are going to use Bluetooth headphones, the good news is that it does support high-resolution codecs such as LHDC, LDAC, and aptX. So it brings, let's say, the complete high-resolution codec kit so that pretty much any pair of headphones that have high-res are compatible with this device. This device has 3 microphones, 2 are on the sides, and we're going to find one focused on noise cancellation in the camera module. It is very hidden, so it is difficult to perceive it, but fortunately, when recording a video, the device lets you turn on or off the noise cancellation. Specifically talking about the noise that can be generated by the wind, so I think it's a good addition. Let's listen to a recorded test with this.
Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con los micrófonos integrados del Honor 200 Pro.
And next we'll look at a video recorded with this device in a much noisier environment. As you could notice, the microphones don't get distorted even in these environments, so if you're going to use it to record concerts, the audio is going to be well captured. And finally, as far as sound and vibration are concerned, this device's optical drive is on the x-axis, although it honestly doesn't generate that much of a premium vibration. It is perceived as a simple vibration, but it is in the x-axis and the operating system does not get to take advantage of it so much in different buttons or sliders. I think in this aspect, the experience is not as premium as on other devices. The front camera of this device is 50 megapixels, has 21 millimeters in its focal length, has f-aperture blunted 1 and fixed focus. You can quickly access the camera by double pressing the volume key when the device is locked. However, if you're browsing any other app and suddenly want to quickly access the camera, obviously that gesture isn't going to work, so I'd like to have a quicker shortcut. This front-facing camera, as you realize, has a considerably good response. The catch, as with all Honor devices, is that even though you're in photo mode and not portrait mode, rotating to the front camera immediately accesses portrait mode. So it's important to see whether or not you have the bokeh effect enabled to avoid unwanted results. As you can see, there is another button to have the beauty effect with different parameters to modify the size of your face, nose size, eye size, chin size, and many other things more. Even apply makeup effects. So it seems to have too many options in this beauty mode. At the top, we can also access some color filters that we can apply in real time, but we can't preview them. And note that it also has the gesture by the palm of the hand for a comfortable capture. In fact, in the settings, we can also enable a floating shutter to place it where it is easier to reach. In good lighting conditions, this front camera has a good quality with a good level of detail and even good color rendering. It is also a remarkably wide camera, although it also allows us to take pictures with a 25mm perspective a little bit closer with a crop on the sensor. So it still maintains the same level of detail that we find in the full size. However, it is a camera that has fixed focus. So if you're a little bit closer to the camera than you should be, you're likely to start losing level of detail. And obviously, if you want to capture some specific detail of your face, it won't be possible. In backlit conditions, the preview still doesn't look optimized. And after processing the image, it does do a good balance of highlights and shadows, but I find that it loses contrast and the colors lose saturation. So the backlit pictures I didn't like too much. In indoor scenes, the colors again gain good saturation, although the level of detail is dramatically reduced. Note that outdoors, the texture of this article of clothing was noticeable, but not now. So you do need a lot of light to get good detail. In the evenings, if you're near a light source, I think the result is good in terms of the light you can get. But again, note that the level of detail is not very high. And in order to reduce noise in some areas, you're also going to notice that the photo has little detail. However, note that in backlit scenes at night, you will have a good result. By balancing highlights and shadows well, the brightest areas are not completely burned out. The shadow areas still come out with good illumination, but I insist that the one that falls off completely says that the device can use the screen as a flash simulation to enhance this type of photography, also increasing the level of detail. But obviously it's still much lower than what doesn't disappoint, but it doesn't seem to be up to par for a high-end device. Night portraits I think are of good quality, detection is good, it doesn't seem to have too much noise like other devices I've been able to test, and it balances the brighter areas well. However, in the daytime test we realized that it is not able to keep the foreground objects in focus. Therefore, it results in a very fake picture that is not what we expect from a high-end device. The photographic system consists of a 16mm ultra-wide camera. It is not exaggeratedly wide. It has a resolution of 12 megapixels and the lens has f2.2 aperture. The good thing here is that it has autofocus, so it also works as a macro camera. Then we find the 27mm main camera with 50 megapixels on its sensor. The aperture is f1.9. It has autofocus and optical stabilization. And finally, the 68mm telephoto camera. So it doesn't have too much optical zoom, about 2.5x. It has 50 megapixels as well, with aperture f2.4, autofocus and optical stabilization. In the capture speed test, we tried to capture number 3, and you notice that it has a sort of buffer that sort of anticipates the momentum. So you don't have to be so worried about pressing the shutter at the exact moment, as the device has an anticipatory response speed. The burst does take more than a second to start, so to use this mode, you do need to press the shutter well in advance. Fortunately though, it's a fairly long burst, 100 pictures with little space between shots. So it might help you, but the response is slow. Though, as you can see, it incorporates a memory capture button, so they have decided to call it, and it is an automatic capture. If it detects someone smiling, it will capture the picture without you pressing the shutter. In the same way, it could capture pets or jumps. So you decide whether to use it or not. At the top, we will also be able to have the button with the 3 different color styles that will offer us for the interpretation of colors, depending entirely on your tastes. Remember that if you tap on the screen, you can adjust the focus and exposure, but you can also access obviously a much more advanced mode in the full list of modes where you can adjust everything manually. The type of metering, the ISO which can go up to 6400, the shutter speed which can go up to 30 seconds, the compensation, the focus, the white balance, and of course if it allows you to capture photos in RAW format for more advanced development. Unfortunately, this device cannot scan QR codes from the main camera interface, so you must access Honor Lens, whose access is in the upper left corner. Once in this application, you can perform the scanning of these codes. It also does not have automatic detection of the documents to make a scan, but it immediately suggests you to enter the scanner mode, through which it can finally detect the edges of these sheets to apply a crop on them. Note that it will also optimize the color to make it look like a much more advanced scanner, and also allows you to adjust the cropping in case it has not detected correctly. It will also allow you to change the color effect it applies if you want to keep the color, and finally you can extract the text also in digital format so you can use it. And to add more pages, you can scan again in the mode, and note that when you press the export button, you will be able to select several pages that you have captured. This export process can be in PDF or also in Notes, so it is a remarkably good scanner. This device does offer a high-resolution mode with the main camera, and note that it is definitely a photo that looks with a very good level of detail. Yes, you could easily crop your photo to extract some fragments while maintaining a good level of detail. In fact, interestingly enough, with the 69mm lens, we also have a high-resolution sensor, so we can also take pictures in this mode, and I'm impressed with the good level of detail that it's able to show in this mode. In scenes with movements, both the ultra-wide camera and the main camera are able to capture these movements well that look frozen, and you don't see a sweeping effect, but the telephoto camera doesn't have the same capabilities because its aperture is much more closed. So the fact that it doesn't have as much light input complicates it a bit in capturing these moving pictures. In outdoor scenes, I could see that the ultra-wide camera is of good quality. As you notice, it doesn't show serious distortion at the edges, although it does show a bit of chromatic aberration, but nothing really worrisome. So I found the ultra-wide camera to be of good quality and good range. The main camera also retains a very similar color rendition to what we saw in the ultra-wide camera, and generally speaking, outdoors it gives us a good result as well. And the 68mm camera is also going to give us a good result, although sometimes it is going to alter a little bit the color rendering compared to the rest of the cameras. And it's worth reminding you that this device incorporates 3 different color representations that you can choose from the camera settings. The natural mode has much softer colors, but watch how they will change completely in the vibrant color, raising their intensity. And if you want the most saturated colors possible, there's the authentic profile, where as you notice the colors and contrast is much more pronounced. So I like that Honor gives the user the ability to choose which color rendition they prefer. So if you prefer very saturated colors, you can use this profile. And if you prefer more natural tones or an in-between, everything you can choose completely to your liking. In indoor scenes, the ultra-wide camera is going to require long exposure, and in this particular case that I tested, note that apparently I didn't hold completely static, and so it has a really very low level of detail, although I also did another test indoors where the results were much better. However, the ultra-wide camera is not so recommended when there is not so much light. Notice the difference now that we are using the main camera. It's a much brighter picture with much more detail, even in the darker areas. On the other hand, the 68mm camera still performs surprisingly well because it even has a tighter aperture than the ultra-wide camera. But either way, note that we have a good result indoors. Although note the difference in color rendition between a photograph taken with the main camera and a photograph taken with the telephoto camera. It seems to me that the main camera has a slightly warmer and more accurate rendition to what I was seeing at the time, while the telephoto camera has a cooler rendition, at least in this situation. But that can vary depending on different factors. In backlit scenes, the preview still doesn't look very optimized, and here the notable thing is that by default HDR comes turned off, so it's important to turn HDR on in case you want better photo quality. Take a look at the results with HDR turned off. They definitely show a completely burned out rear area, which is not pleasant. However, when HDR mode is turned on, the balance of highlights and shadows is much better. In fact, the contrast is also increased a bit more, but the picture quality is actually very good. Although in this test specifically, it seems that the telephoto camera did not give enough quality. Notice that there are areas that look very strange on the back. There is a sweeping motion, but this is not something that happens all the time. It was just something that happened in this specific test. At night, I was surprised at how good a job the ultra-wide camera does, balancing the brighter area well, eliminating noise very well, and maintaining a good level of detail. Overall, I was not expecting such a good result, but I was surprised for the better. Of course, the main camera is always the one that performs best in these dark environments, and again, it balances well the most illuminated area, controls perfectly well the noise of the darkest areas, and maintains a good level of detail. On the other hand, with the 68mm camera, we also appreciate an excellent performance in these lighting conditions. And here I would like to point out that it maintains this warm tonality that was present at the time. So the night shots are indeed of very good quality. Although in super dark scenes where there is no direct illumination, the ultra-wide camera can suffer much more to define the details well. However, this result from the ultra-wide camera also serves to show how good the main camera is at capturing these very dark scenes. And in very dark scenarios, even if you try to use the telephoto camera, the device will give priority to the main camera by applying digital zoom because the telephoto camera would not have good capabilities to capture light in such dark environments. For macro photography, it has also surprised me with tremendous quality. Remember, in this case, use the ultra-wide camera by zooming in a little bit, but see how close you can get to these extremely small objects. So you can really get an excellent level of detail while maintaining good color saturation and overall good light quality. This is as close as you can get to these small objects with the main camera, and obviously because of the aperture and the sensor, you're going to notice a smeared or smudged effect in some areas. That's why it's appreciated that they incorporate macro mode in conjunction with the ultra-wide camera. With the telephoto camera, this is as close as you can get to objects, so it obviously doesn't have macro capabilities. It would have been an interesting addition, but not mandatory. And before I talk about the whole zoom range, I should show you that this is the ultra-wide camera. And if the ultra-wide camera range doesn't seem enough for you, you can use the panorama mode, which maintains a good dynamic range, which not all devices do. Although it is not completely spectacular because there are still some areas that are a bit burnt, but overall it maintains a good dynamic range and it is a panoramic photograph that has a good level of detail, in addition to all the breadth that in itself distinguishes it. But let's look at the full zoom range now. We are appreciating the ultra-wide camera, then the 27mm main camera. Next, the 54mm setting that the manufacturer enables through a cutout in the sensor, so it gives us a perspective of 2x, but it is still the main sensor. Next, we jump to the 68mm telephoto camera, where we regain all optical quality. And if you distinguish good detail, we're now looking at a photograph with a 136mm setting. That is 5x zoom, and I want you to distinguish that it is still seen with an excellent level of detail. While we couldn't claim that it's 100% optical quality, the truth is it's very close to that, so the 5x zoom photographs still look very good. In fact, the 10x zoom photography I still consider to be of good quality, although I think this is the maximum zoom level where the device can boast excellent quality. Because now you're looking at the 25x zoom picture, and definitely here you can see that it's digital zoom and you don't see that much quality, and despite that, the device still allows you to go up to 50x digital zoom, but it's much more forced and it doesn't look as high quality. However, as I say, at the 10x zoom setting, you could still get these kinds of very good quality pictures. Although if you try to zoom in on these pictures, it's obviously not going to look as spectacular, but I was honestly surprised for the good zoom quality that this device has, considering it's not an ultra premium device. Finally, let's take a look at the portrait photography results. Notice that this device does an excellent job in this aspect as well. The foreground and background detection is practically perfect. It detects gaps very well. The bokeh effect generated in the background is nice and maintains a good level of detail even from this perspective with the main camera. This device also allows us to apply a crop on the sensor to give us a 2x perspective, which looks like a telephoto lens, but it is still using the main camera. However, it maintains a good level of detail that makes it look like it was indeed a specific telephoto lens of 50mm, but I love the result. In this type of photographs, we are going to find a good quality. Maybe we are going to notice a little blurred edges if we get very demanding in the smallest details, but if you do not zoom in the picture, it looks with a good detail. And then it allows us to use the telephoto camera. Although it notes that the color rendition is very different, it seems to have a slightly cooler tone, which I personally did not like so much. Although this obviously could be improved with an update. Also, when you use the telephoto camera, for some reason the foreground and background detection gets slightly worse, but nothing really serious. Finally, here you are seeing other effects of the different color styles that Honor has incorporated in collaboration with the Harcourt studio in Paris, where as you can see, you can have a perspective with a little more nostalgia or the traditional black and white that has been worked very hand in hand with Harcourt. That is, it is not simply applying a grayscale, but through different studies and analysis they have made of the photographs taken by this studio, they have created this color profile, which honestly looks good. Personally, I don't tend to use the black and white mode too much, but if you really like black and white portrait photography, you might enjoy the quality of this. A device. Video recording on this device can be up to full HD at 60 frames per second with the main camera and telephoto camera. The ultra-wide camera unfortunately is not able to reach this setting. As you can see, it disappears completely. In fact, the ultra-wide camera cannot even record in full HD at 60 frames per second, so it is of much lower quality. When recording video, note that we can have the button to turn on the flashlight without the need to stop the video recording. We will also find a button for noise reduction, which I told you about a moment ago when I told you about the microphones. There is also a button to take pictures while recording and another button to rotate to the front camera without stopping the video recording. This is something that wasn't present on Honor devices before, so it's worth noting its incorporation. Finally, note that we also have the button to pause and resume our recording, and obviously there will be this slider to control the zoom with greater speed, in addition to the quick shortcuts that we have available on the screen. And if you stop recording, you are also going to have access to beauty mode, although in this case the resolution is reduced to full HD as you can't use in it, and you also have the bokeh effect for video recording, but again in full HD. Note that also within the professional mode, you can switch to video mode so that while you are recording video, you can move parameters such as ISO, shutter speed, focus, white balance, and other things. Also note that it includes a story mode, which is a kind of template that you can fill in with different videos and photos that you will be capturing with this device. It includes some special transitions and animations, so it can be attractive to create content quickly without the need to edit it later. You can select between different scenes. Some of them will use the multi-camera mode, so it can be attractive for a group of people. And finally, it also includes the solo cut mode that was released several generations ago that will allow you to record horizontally and vertically at the same time. So notice that I can record the video horizontally and click the person I want to record vertically as well. Then it's going to save both the horizontal clip and the vertical clip separately for later use. I think for cross-platform content creation it can be attractive. This device does have the ability at 60 frames per second, so you're looking at this example recorded at that setting. That's a very nice thing that normally only premium devices allow, so it speaks very highly of this device. In fact, not only with the main camera, but also with the telephoto camera and without the need to cut the video recording. The ultra-wide camera does not have these same capabilities, but it is appreciated that at least it allows us to switch between two cameras. The rest of the tests will be done in 4K at 30 frames per second. You're looking at this outdoor test with the ultra-wide camera. The quality is definitely good, although it has a little too much contrast. Notice that by switching to the main camera, you see a video with a little less contrast and less sharp shadows, but when you switch to the telephoto camera, it's back to higher contrast and more intense shadows. So it is quite curious the behavior that we find between the three cameras when recording video. Let's just say that it seems to me that they don't maintain such a consistent experience. In fact, the color of the telephoto camera seems to me not very accurate. In indoor scenes, the ultra-wide camera makes a good effort to try to reduce noise, but that will make the level of detail is low. Besides that, you do notice a result in low light. Switching to the main camera, you immediately notice the improvement in lighting, and interestingly, the telephoto camera doesn't seem to lose too much illumination. So the ultra-wide camera is the least recommended in these indoor conditions, but the rest work well. In backlit scenes, you notice that the ultra-wide camera is going to focus a hell of a lot more on illuminating the face, so it will sacrifice more backlit areas. It does not seem to have good capabilities in this regard. On the other hand, the main camera improves in this section because it is able to balance highlights and shadows better. Even if the face is very close to the camera, it still has a good balance of lights and shadows, although curiously in this environment it has again very marked contrast, so the shadows may come out with greater intensity. Finally, if we switch to the telephoto camera, we will notice that it again gives total priority to the face, sacrificing much of the illuminated background. In addition, the color is quite distorted with respect to the rest of the cameras. So in backlighting, I would only recommend using the main camera. The rest of the cameras do not have a good level. However, this device integrates an HDR recording mode, and note that even with the ultra-wide camera, yes, we are seeing a balanced result with the main camera as well and with the telephoto camera as well. So it pays a lot to enable this in the settings if you're going to be recording in these kinds of lighting environments, although it's not compatible with 4K. On at night, we noticed that the ultra-wide camera becomes a complete disaster. While it had surprised us in photography, in the video we noticed a lot of noise. The darkest areas are not able to illuminate them in a good way. So for this price, honestly, this ultra-wide camera is very disappointing at night. The main camera improves in terms of noise control, but it still doesn't balance highlights and shadows well, and also improves in capturing elements in darker areas. Look at the difference between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. It's definitely an abysmal difference. However, even so, the main camera doesn't look that spectacular to me. And finally, if we switch to the telephoto camera, you'll notice that it's not able to balance highlights and shadows well either. The darker areas will also not have enough illumination to have a spectacular result. So night video recording in general does not seem to me a highlight of this device, but on the contrary, a weak point. As for the stabilization it is able to achieve, note that with the ultra-wide camera, while we are walking, we are going to have a good performance. Aggressive movements are not noticeable. In fact, even as we go running, I think it manages to balance all these compensating movements very well. Switching to the main camera, you'll notice that the movements are also well balanced. Only again, this clip serves to note that the colors can sometimes feel oversaturated. But in terms of stabilization specifically, even when running, the result is good. And with the telephoto camera, it also gives a good stabilization result. So that's one of the strongest points of the video recording of this device, as opposed to the color management. And note that it also allows us to have a portrait recording mode where it blurs the background. If there's not too much movement, the result is positive, although it's only going to record in full HD. However, note that even if I'm very far away from the camera, it still applies this blur effect. And interestingly, it is able to keep objects in focus, so in this sense, it does a very good job. Let's say we can only criticize it that the video is in full HD and not in 4K, but that is something that only iPhone and Galaxy in its high range have achieved. So, I think it does a good job in this mode. In fact, it also allows us to apply zoom to have a telephoto perspective, although being digital zoom, we will not find the same quality. Even with zoom, it struggles a bit more to keep objects in focus. For the fast camera, we will find 15cx as base speed. Note that in some movements, we do see a good stabilization, in other movements, not so much. Fortunately, the video is in 4K, although 15cx still seems a bit fast for certain applications or certain moments. But the fastest it can go is even 1800x, with which you could record plant growth or spectacular landscapes. So the fast camera capabilities seem very good to me. On the other hand, it has two slow motion modes, both in full HD. The first is at 120 frames per second and the second is at 240 frames per second, so you might notice movements slower. In both cases, the quality is good, although we would have liked to see a super slow motion mode, but it is not present. The focus could be said to be a bit slow, but that helps it to be quite accurate. You don't notice that the focus is constantly changing, which could be annoying. With the main camera, you can't focus from so close, but remember that the ultra-wide camera does have autofocus, so you could be very close to objects while keeping a good focus, which can help you capture very small objects. Lastly, the telephoto camera is not capable of focusing from so close, so when the device detects that you are trying to focus on a small object, it immediately switches to digital zoom. In fact, I don't know if you noticed the difference in the switch that this device makes. So you would not be able to record small objects with the telephoto camera, since this option cannot be enabled or disabled, but it is a default behavior of the device. Finally, let's look at the zoom behavior. Please note that the change between one camera and the other will be very noticeable. Especially the telephoto camera, as I anticipated, has a really bad color management. But talking specifically about the zoom, the level of detail seems good to me. I think that for the price range, we could not demand much more. It also maintains a good stabilization, although the maximum zoom is 10x. And considering that it integrates a telephoto camera, I think it falls short. We could demand a higher quality. But what bothered me personally the most was the drastic color change between the telephoto camera and the main camera. Here we are looking at an example of 4K recording with this camera. I really did like it in terms of the level of detail and also in terms of stabilization. However, the color seems a bit pale and does not have a high dynamic range, as even without being in backlit scenarios, some areas are very burnt. And being in backlit conditions, this is going to be much more noticeable. But I liked how it managed to stabilize the video even when it was running, which is very remarkable. But as another negative point, remember that it has fixed focus, so you couldn't zoom in on some object to show it to the audience. Indoors, vibration is too noticeable because this device tries to eliminate noise, so it won't be very advisable to record in these low-light environments unless you have the device completely static on a tripod or something similar. The color looks good, but the vibration is too noticeable. And obviously at night the behavior will be very similar. If there's more movement, you're going to notice more noise present and vibration when you're walking around. It is not able to regulate well the most illuminated areas of your recording. In general, it is not perceived with such a high-quality camera. I think this point could be much better considering it is a rather expensive device. Interestingly, this device does incorporate a fast motion mode, but the resolution is not 4K and it also goes at a low bit per second rate. So if you pause at any time, the result will be in poor detail. It also doesn't incorporate slow motion, but it does incorporate a dual recording mode with which you can display both the rear camera and the front camera. Although the front camera is displayed in a 3:4 ratio, which is curious because it does not show us a traditional video format. This box, we can move it, it does not have rounded corners, and in this case only allows us to use the main camera. So it does have focus enabled, and you can also apply zoom. And something that I find very curious about this recording mode is that through a button you can speed up the recording while you are recording, so that some parts could be accelerated. Then you can resume at normal speed, and it will also allow you to switch to different cameras. Without cutting the video, for example, you could switch to the ultra-wide camera and a zoomed-in perspective. Although it is not the telephoto camera, but it is a digital zoom scene that would allow you to show two angles of the same scene. It will also allow us to switch to a split-screen view with the front camera and the rear camera, or we will also be able to have only the front camera or only the rear camera. All this without cutting your video recording itself. So overall, I liked it quite a bit, but it could be improved if it would allow us to use the telephoto camera. In terms of software, this device comes with Android 14 and Honor Magic OS 8.0. So it has the latest software from both companies. That's a good thing. It promises 3 years of software updates and 4 years of security patches, which to talk about a device of this price falls short. Although honestly, it is enough time to have a good lifetime for this device. It includes several customization options where you can change the font that is installed, you can change the wallpapers obviously, brings different themes, you can even change the icons. Although most icon packs or themes are paid, but it is something you can install and download to customize with a single touch. It also includes the always-on display function, which can be with the entire screen simply with a dimmed background, although that will consume too much battery, or it can be in a specific cover that you can select from different styles. There are some that are animated, some that are static, and even some with text that you can customize. You can also choose whether or not you want to see the battery status and date and some additional information. It also has the magic capsule through which you can see a little more information in some specific applications. For example, in the voice recorder, you can have a quick look at the time of your recording, and in fact, if you tap on this capsule, you can also pause or completely stop this recording. It will also be compatible, for example, with a music player where you can also have access to control the music directly from this small capsule. And also in the timer, you will be able to have access to this quick information. It also includes an intelligent detection function that is able to detect your gaze. This is for several things. For starters, so that the screen stays on while you are looking at the phone, something that is really very useful. Also, so that if the device starts beeping and detects that you turn to look at it, it will immediately lower the sound volume because it's already aware that you're going for it. And finally, to have an intelligent rotation. Surely it has happened to you that if you lie down looking at your cell phone and you have the rotation enabled, the device ends up changing to a horizontal view even though you continue to see it in a vertical view lying down. So in this case, it uses the camera to detect the position of your eyes. So if you lie down looking at the phone will not rotate because it detects that you are still looking at it vertically. It's a feature that I really find overly useful. It also supports air gestures to control your device. For example, you can scroll by simply placing your hand on top of the phone. It requires a bit of a learning curve, but you can do it. You have to make the gestures very clear, but it can be useful if you are washing the dishes and suddenly you are watching TikTok. In fact, you can also take screenshots by making the fist gesture and it works just as well. And you can also do the gesture of going backwards by simply showing the palm of your hand and then turning to the back. So those are some gestures that you can take advantage of to control the device, and I find them useful for the most part. Of course, it has a variety of other gestures to take advantage of some buttons or turn on the screen when you simply rotate the device and things like that. But those are more traditional ones that we see on other devices as well, and it has a sidebar through which you can open apps in a floating window mode. These windows you can resize, and you can also minimize them into both a bubble and a mini window in the upper right corner. The catch I find with this feature is that you can only open one app at a time, so you are much more limited. Although it does support Instagram and YouTube, which are applications that at times are complicated for other manufacturers. Although if you combine it with the split screen mode, you can have up to 3 apps open at the same time. So I think you have enough, but not the maximum offered by other manufacturers. And by the way, you could also pair some applications that you have opened in split screen so that you have direct access from the main screen. It also has a section called Favorite Space, which is a kind of clipboard. You will be able to save videos or images in this section by simply sliding 3 fingers down, and it is a kind of clipboard so that you can later drag and drop from this favorite space. Although I didn't like its name in English. In fact, the feature does not seem so attractive to me, but what I did like is that if you are on a web page reading an article or some news, you can do this same gesture of 3 fingers down and it will save all this content in the Notes application so that later you can check it offline quickly. It also has the simple mode that I've dubbed as grandparent mode, where everything looks much bigger and is easier to use. And it has a travel mode that really should be called driving mode or something similar, because it's going to help you automatically answer or reject certain calls. You can set an audio recording so that when you answer the call, you can simply tell it, I can't answer because I'm driving, or you can have the device send a text message directly. Everything is completely configurable to your liking. Remember that you can also use it as a universal remote control. Just pass some tests that the application will suggest, and you can use this device to control televisions, air conditioners, and other products that support infrared control. In the gallery, it will allow you to generate videos or a collage quickly by selecting multiple elements, and although you can extract text by pressing and holding on an image, you cannot extract people to cut them more easily. That I think is an important absence. With respect to the artificial intelligence functions to start, we will find a widget on the main screen where you will suggest the applications that you usually use at different times of the day, so it will not always show the same suggestions. For example, if at night you commonly use a social networking application, access will appear there, and if in the mornings you use an application to read news or something similar, it will also appear in that section. On the other hand, in the Quick Settings panel, we will also find artificial intelligence suggestions that will learn the behavior you have throughout the day to show you those buttons. With an update, it also received a translator that has a conversation view, so you can show a person face-to-face the device and everyone can read the text of the translation, although it works with internet connection, so it does not seem to me such a remarkable feature considering that any other application can do it. It also has Magic Portal as part of the artificial intelligence suite that will allow you to drag and drop content directly into this small application portal that appears on both the right and left side. For example, you could drag a video and post it directly to Facebook, saving you several steps. Instead of having to open the app and then select you want to make a new post and then select you want to attach a video and search for that video here, you save a little bit more steps. The same can be with images, and even text is also supported, and that's where the artificial intelligence is more noticeable. Artificial intelligence, because supposedly it would be able to analyze the text and its components to see what applications it suggests you. In this case, for example, from WhatsApp, you can drag an address that you have been sent and you can drag it directly to Google Maps to give you the directions. Although it provides it from Telegram and there it does not work, then the application somehow must be compatible with this option. Supposedly in the portrait photo section, it brings an option to improve group photos. It seems to me that it is a function that looks attractive in the description, but in practical life it didn't work for me. Supposedly it improves the detail of the faces and would even be able to open the eyes of people who have appeared with their eyes closed, but as I tell you in my tests, it just didn't work. Remember, in portrait photography you can adjust the intensity of the bokeh effect. Interestingly, Honor points out that this is done with artificial intelligence, although it seems to me that this is something that has been done for many years in other brands without the need to mention artificial intelligence. Then you also have to understand that in full of brands use artificial intelligence for anything that does not necessarily use artificial intelligence. What it could use is the new memories section found in the Gallery app. Here the device will be able to automatically generate a slideshow of the photos or videos on your device, can group people to present you these memories. Then it seems to me an important section. And when recording a video, supposedly it is also capable of detecting the best moments, so that later you simply select the instant movie button with artificial intelligence and it will make an edition with different templates. Although the first time you use each of these templates, you must download it from the internet, and as I say, supposedly it will generate this video with the best moments. Also, with an update received the artificial intelligence draft, with which through generative artificial intelligence it will eliminate people who are getting in the way of your photograph, or even objects, not to be confused with options that were in past generations that filled in your photo, or even objects. I have tested this one and it works well, although it requires internet connection. And finally, remember that it has Gemini, although this is from Google, so all other devices have it, an assistant that you can ask for different things like writing emails or similar things, and it will help you very easily, although I insist that all Androids have this, so I do not highlight it as something unique. The device integrates a fingerprint reader inside the screen that supports 5 records. You should know that it allows you to change the unlock animation between 6 different options, so you have plenty to choose from. Also has facial recognition. But I remind you that it is not a facial recognition 3 of, although the cutout of this section of the camera is wider. Actually, here has other sensors that perhaps serve for gestures in the air or other things, but not for facial recognition. Includes unlocking Google's extended unlock to stay unlocked in secure environments, but the password manager is not Google's as it usually is on the vast majority of Android devices, but it is Honor's own password manager, which does have cloud sync between all Honor devices. Then I think it is a very good thing to automatically fill in some passwords, obviously all verified by your fingerprint, and it has 2 sections that might seem redundant, the parallel space and the private space. Both implementations allow you to have in a protected space your own applications and files accessible with a special password or with your fingerprint, but the parallel space is available as an additional application within your own device. However, the private space is much more hidden. You can access it with a different unlock code than your main code, or with a different fingerprint than the fingerprint you always use, and in this case it would be like having 2 phones in one each with its own applications and even its own personalization. And it also includes the basics of the device, and it also includes the basics of the device and their private space. Customization, and also includes the basics of security, as the safe or application lock also includes the option to clone some applications, so you can use 2 accounts of the same application but does not have a child mode, and that could improve, nor has a private VPN or something like that. But if you have an antivirus in collaboration with TrustLock, so you can have a scan against malware beyond Google Play Protect that many have seen that it is useless, then security level I think it is well. The battery of this device has a capacity of 5,200 milliampere hours, so it is a really very attractive battery. In this sense, has a higher capacity than the vast majority of Android devices today. And in my test showed that it has a good behavior, although in the extreme drain test in the foreground did not surprise me if it exceeded 4 hours, but I expected it to be closer to 5 hours once I had known the capacity that has this battery. But we must remember that it also has a very powerful processor. Then in activities, very demanding activities, it is not going to be so surprising in the battery life, although it fulfills well. But where it will be much more noticeable is in the most everyday use, because in my background drain test I noticed that it has a tremendous energy management and managed to extend this time to more than 8.5 hours. So it is a device that if it has a very powerful processor, then it is going to be very good. So it is a device that if it is going to be able to stand out in the battery, especially for the good management that has the operating system, if you are a user who is on social networks and suddenly is reading news or WhatsApp and this type of basic tasks, the device, believe me, that is going to behave very. Also includes a normal power saving mode that you can use on a daily basis, and it will extend even more this duration. Or you have the ultra mode that you could get to use, and in emergencies where the device restricts you much more things, so you as a user decide what saving mode to use. Also include you a 100-watt charger in the box that has a relatively compact size, considering the power that it has. That yes, it is a little heavy, but it is a charger that you are really going to enjoy a lot. In my test with 15 minutes, it got up to 37% power. Having started the test with the device fully discharged in 30 minutes, it got up to 72%, and the full charge finished it in just under an hour. Considering it has a good battery life, I think combined with its good charging power, we found a very good battery life. Good charging power. We found a very good experience here. In fact, it also has wireless charging, which could be up to 66 watts. So even without the need to connect a cable to it, you could get to recover power very quickly. And it also has reversible wireless charging. So if you have some Honor or other brand headphones with wireless charging, you can put them on the back of this phone to charge it. It also has smart charging, so in case you leave it charging all night, it will charge slower, learning your routine, although I wouldn't recommend leaving it charging all night considering it charges pretty fast. Although please note that it doesn't integrate the charging lock mode, so if you are one of those users that need to have your device plugged in at all times, the battery could get damaged faster. This device incorporates support for 5G networks, so it has the latest in that aspect, and in fact also supports eSIM. So if you are going on a trip, it's much more convenient to put eSIM. And since this cell phone supports eSIM, let me tell you about Era, which is a service that offers you eSIM in case you are going to travel. Can be very comfortable. Just hire it before you travel and you will get a QR code in your email, or also from the same application Era, you can have it available, this QR code that later you are going to install on your cell phone with your email, and you will receive a QR code in your email. Very convenient. Just hire it before you travel and you will receive a QR code to your email. Or also from the same Era application, you can have available this QR code that later you will install on your phone with YSIM. Just make sure you do not activate the YSIM before you are already traveling. Just install it and leave it ready, so that once you are in the country you want to travel, activate this YSIM and ready, you will be able to enjoy the service as you have hired it. For example, let's say you want to go to Europe, see that they offer various plans. At the time of recording this video would offer you a gigabyte for 7 days at $5. Obviously, there are also 30-day plans with higher capacities or even longer duration of time. Everything will depend on you as a user. So in the description, I leave you the link so you can go to acquire your YSIM with Era. I personally already tested it when I went to Berlin and it worked perfectly well. This is one of the advantages of having a device with iSIM. Also, it supports Wi-Fi 6 networks with a very good download speed. And the good thing about all this is that through software, if you can choose, if you want some applications can only use Wi-Fi or can also use your mobile data to properly manage the use of your data plan. Also supports Bluetooth 5.3, has NFC, obviously it also has OTG, and it doesn't have FM radio. Yes, it supports wireless screen projection, not wired, and supposedly it can project with a desktop mode, which would make it more attractive. But I must tell you that in this case it wasn't able to do it with good quality. It did it only once, but then it stopped responding and never worked again. So I guess guess it will be something they will fix with an update. It also has Android Auto, and as far as sensors, it doesn't really lack anything. It has accelerometer, magnetic champ sensor, orientation sensor, gyroscope light sensor, but the proximity sensor is virtual, so it is not so easily enabled. Remember, these sensors use the speaker and the microphone to detect. So there are some environments where it might not be able to detect very well that you have the cell phone near, and that personally bothers. Neither has the pressure sensor that we usually see in several premium devices, although we could not require it, and obviously has the gravity sensor, linear acceleration, rotation vector, and many others. In the Honor ecosystem, it has one of its strongest points inherited from Huawei, so you can use it along with the Magic Book, which are the computers. There is also the Honor Pad, Honor Watch, Honor Band, and Honor Airbox. Actually, they have a very good ecosystem in terms of interaction, although they still do not have so many variety of options. So I think there are only 1 or 2 options in terms of interaction, but they do not have so many options yet. There are only 1 or 2 options in each of these categories. But at least, as I say, if you have a pretty good interaction, for example, you have the shared clipboard to copy content on one device and paste it on another, or you can fully use your cell phone from your computer, taking advantage of the touch screen and several similar little things. They also have Honor Share to quickly send documents or photos. Then it is an ecosystem that really, if I like, although in terms of control of the Internet of Things and cloud storage still depend on Google, where they do not depend so much on Google is in the management of everything that has to do with health, because if they have their own application that will connect with their accessories to go counting your steps and all your fitness. So the points where it could improve would be to offer its users an application developed by Honor for the control of home devices and offer Honor Cloud with different storage plans, but that we do not see. Well, let's go to the performance test by opening several applications at the same time on this device. Remember that it incorporates the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3A processor that, although it is not the most powerful, if it is one of the most powerful processors of today, accompanied by 12 gigabytes of RAM, and still Honor adds up to 12 gigabytes of virtual RAM, completely unnecessary from my point of view. But it is available, and as you realize, it gave me the opportunity to test the performance of this device. And as you can see, it gave me an average of 2.1 seconds to open each one of these applications, so it shows a lot of power when opening applications. And in fact, I still had some other things open, but you will definitely notice that this device is not going to be restarting applications or anything like that. It has a lot of physical RAM memory, and also Honor has a lot of memory. Physical RAM. And also Honor has one of the best virtual RAM options I have tested, unlike the vast majority of devices that offer virtual RAM. In the case of Honor, I have not been disappointed at any time. Even in much cheaper devices, we see good performance when they have virtual RAM. So in this device, which is much more expensive, I expect something even better, and that is what we are seeing. We are really see that the device is going to behave in a fairly loose and fluid way. Really, there is no problem at all in the performance that is able to offer us. This device notes that all applications are still running even when I'm switching between them. In fact, knows that virtual RAM memory cannot turn it off at any time, which is quite curious. By the way, here also reminded me that it comes with a specific chip for the radio frequencies, the Honor C1. This will help the management of the antennas of the device to have a better performance, but where possibly stands out even more, the device is in the storage, where we find 512 gigabytes without a doubt is an excellent capacity, and not only will be a storage of tremendous capacity, but also have a good speed of reading, although it is not the most advanced of the moment. Then although it is a storage with a lot of capacity, does not reach the same speed that reach other high-end devices. In the writing, I think it does not disappoint, but insists that it will not disappoint, but insists that it will not disappoint. Writing, I think it does not disappoint, but I insist that we do not see something with too much speed. However, I think that for a large majority of users, this is more than enough. As usual, we will also test the video export test, where absolutely everything is used, both the processor as the RAM and storage. So let's see how long it takes. The video has a total duration of 1 minute with clips recorded with this cell phone in 4K, and ready it took almost 30 seconds, so it is within what we could expect. With respect to games, there is a tool hidden within the application settings that serves to manage the games you have installed and choose what content if you are going to show the additional controls panel when you open a game notes that will show you a dialog to let you know that in the sidebar you will find more options to start. We will be able to open applications in a floating window mode in order to answer some messages or see some notification without closing your game. Also, we will find different performance profiles to give priority to the maximum power or have a more balanced profile. Depends on you completely as a user what you want to prioritize. Also, we will be able to have the options of do not disturb and prevention of accidental touches. There is also the option of different color filters that you can apply in your game. Also, we will be able to have an improvement in touch response by enabling this option, and we can take screenshots or screen recordings from this section. There is also a button to lock the rotation, and that's all. As you see, is a suite that has good options but is not the most complete we have seen in Call of Duty. This device by default gives us the very high quality graphics at a maximum frame rate notes that also appears available ultra rate, but the graphic quality drops to a medium level. However, I think if we are going to find a good graphics compatibility, as in fact also gives us access to different special effects that are generally only found in the high end. In this sense, if it gives us a good feeling and giving priority to the graphic quality, we notice that really has a good experience with 60 frames per second perfectly stable. You see it yourself in the graph of the. We also played this content giving priority to the refresh rate that, as you saw a moment ago, reduces the graphic quality. And in this case, again, we had a perfect experience in stability. If you notice, a small low peak was simply when we raised the brightness of the screen, but really the device maintains a very remarkable gaming experience. And again, with a well-controlled temperature, notes that its average was 92 frames per second in this content. Then we also played Legends, moving the graphic detail up to the ultra level. And in this case, we already know that this game usually has a quite strange behavior. So yes, it started at 90 frames per second, but then it went down to 60 frames per second. But overall, it kept a good fluidity and good stability. So I think it is within the expected, and the performance was really good, again, with a good temperature control. And note that it has really very good graphics, this game. So we have nothing to reproach this device in terms of performance and power. In SpongeBob, we are going to find by default the resolution and high quality at 60 frames per second. For the test, we went up to epic at 60 frames per second to see what it was capable of. And again, the experience really is very good. We already know that this processor gives good power, and this will not be the exception. If it is going to give us a high-end performance, is not perceived as a simple device. In this aspect, complies perfectly, offering a high-end performance at a price that we could still consider as high-end entry, 59 frames per second on average, and still with the temperature. And finally, in Genshin Impact, by default, it has the medium quality, but we went up to very high, and we also went up to 60 frames per second, although other parameters we left them at the default level without going as high as possible, considering that it is not yet a top-of-the-range device. And again, the performance of this device was quite good, although in this case, after a minute and a half, it started to lose a little stability, having a little more fluctuations, and this probably was due to the temperature, because at the end of our test, it reached 45.9 degrees Celsius, so it seems that it cost a little cooled. In this was the most complicated test, but I think if you adjust to a proper graphics quality, we will be able to have a very good performance. Remember that it is not a device 100% focused on gaming, so the cooling probably makes you suffer in very long games with very advanced graphics, but overall, if we gave a good experience. In conclusion, it seems to me that this is a good approach to the high-end, although personally I still could not consider it high-end for some shortcomings that I was detailing in the video review. However, at its launch, Honor launched a promotion that gave us final price 15,999 still. With some gifts, I think at that price is much more attractive, but you yourself have been able to know it point by point. I hope you liked this video. If so, you know that you can indicate it, and see you the next one.